Showtime! The Capital G show starts right now.
What's up YouTube, Capital G here. Sorry I didn't get a chance to post this up yesterday like I wanted to. But of course I am finishing up the top 10 fusion monsters of all time, the Yugioh Hierarchy. Let's get into it and go into the top 5. Number 5, Gladiator Beast, HERAKLINOS. So how many people out there actually know that Glad Beast won their first Shonen Jump before Grazaris even came out? Well, it just so happens to turn out that I'm one of those people, and I'm going to give credit where credit is due. If you looked at HERAKLINOS just from a power perspective, this card could easily make the top 5. You know, negating any spell or trap that you wanted to on both players' turn is obviously powerful. Just see Legendary 6 Samurai Shien as proof of that. And even though the card did have a 1-card cost attached to it to activate its effect, it was pretty much inconsequential because you could just discard a Glad Beast and then tag into something like Darius on your next turn, and you could resummon the Glad Beast you just discarded for Herc and just put extra damage on board. You know, Herc in its prime was really just a game sealer. Like, it was one of those cards where when it hit the board, you pretty much knew that the game was over. You know, even if the mirror match came up, dad returned, it really didn't matter, especially if you had it backed with like a Royal Oppression. You might as well call it Deadbolt because that shit was a lock. You know, summoning Herc was also incredibly easy thanks to simple Darius and Secator plays, as long as you had like a Test Tiger to make sure that they were tagged in easily. You know, Herc made a profound impact, and the card seldomly gets the credit that it deserves. It also was $300 at one point. It was an amazing card. Number 4, Elemental Hero, The Shining. As much as I love Absolute Zero, and I love that card a lot, there is in fact a better E-Hero fusion out there, and The Shining is that hero. I mean, it's well known that I love boss monsters that pay you back for the investment, and this card does that in spades. You know, giving you back up to 2 heroes if it dies and goes to the graveyard is really good, but the real power in The Shining is the fact that he's so fucking huge. That's what she said. It's no secret that when used properly, The Shining usually hits the field at a pretty incredible 3200 attack, but with the potential of it being even more powerful than that, you know, going up 300 every single time that you banish another hero. And one of the things that makes The Shining even better is it dodges the whole, well, I just won't put any monsters on board trap that some of the other fusions can fall into. Cards like Ab-Zero and Nova Master, you know, for them to be really effective, they need monsters on your opponent's side of the board. You know, if your opponent doesn't put anything in front of you, they're not going to be wanting to take a whole bunch of 32 shots to the face. I mean, I think that Shining is easily the most well-rounded hero fusion. He's also the most low-risk, high-reward. I mean, this card is just really, really good. Number 3, Cyber Twin and Cyber Dragon. Okay, so I begrudgingly lump these two together because I kind of feel like they've lived the same competitive life. You look at both cards and they were both extremely vital to popular OTK decks. They were both prime targets for future fusion. I mean, both cards could just flat out end the game when they hit the field, and both should have been fairly difficult to summon, but they pretty much had the process circumvented thanks to powerful banned cards of the likes of Metamorphosis and Cyber Sign. In layman's terms, and to really simplify it, Twinned and N are just big-ass machine dragons that serve one purpose. Like, in the game, the turn that they're summoned, and, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, boy did they ever do that job well. You know, Twin was a key component of the Demise OTK, where usually you would drop Demise, blow up the field, and then you would metamorph that into Cyber Twin Dragon. And when you look at Cyber M Dragon, he was obviously a vital part of the Cyberstein OTK because you bring him out with Cyberstein paying 5,000 life points, which almost always meant that your life points were lower, which means you could megamorph his ass to 8,000 attack, and I mean, you could pretty much just call it a night at that point. You know, both decks were kind of gimmicky, but they did both win Shonen Jumps, and both of these cards also saw play in machine decks after both of those decks died in popularity. So even though they were never really significant outside of their OTK-ish decks, I also think that it's worth mentioning that these two cards caused a ton of collateral damage, bringing forth things like the first ever mid-format banning of a card, that would obviously be Cyberstein, the banning of Metamorphosis, and the first and only ritual monster to ever see the limited list, Demise. Number 2, Thousand Eyes Restrict. So let me just say that I feel like Thousand Eyes Restrict is kind of like a legend in my eyes. I feel like anything that I say won't do justice to how amazing this card was in its day. For starters, let it be known that Thousand Eyes is the only fusion monster ever to grace the ban list. Hell, I think it's the only fusion monster to ever even see the forbidden and limited list in the game's history. That alone should show you how much Konami thinks of this card. Thousand Eyes was also one of the cornerstones of what is generally accepted to be the most skillful format of all time. I'm talking about Go format, obviously, where this card completely changed the way people played. I mean, it was difficult to get over because no monsters could attack, but at the same time, it was difficult to defend against because if you put a monster at board, you were kind of risking it, knowing that cards like Book of Moon and Tsukuyumi could put him face down, thus he'd be able to employ his effect again. You know, this card combined with Scapegoats forced a slower format. I mean, it's very difficult for two cards to completely change the tempo of a format, but they actually achieved it. They made a slower, more thought-invoking metagame, which I really think would be the biggest single accomplishment on this list if it wasn't for number 1, Gladiator Beast Grazaris. Okay, so listen to me very carefully as I make the following statement. Gladiator Beast Grazaris, in my personal opinion, was without a doubt the single most impactful, not fusion, but extra deck card ever created. Like, don't get me wrong, we've already established that Glads won a Shonen Jump before Grazaris, but after that event, the deck pretty much faded away as Six Samurai and Dad Return kind of became the best decks, like the two top contenders post Phantom Darkness. However, when Gladiator Beast Grazaris came out, I mean, let's just be real. There was no argument what the best deck was. Period, point blank, it was Glads. And equally as impressive, it did it single-handedly. Remember, there was only one Gladiator Beast card in all of Light of Destruction, and for a deck to go from, let's say, Tier 2 to Tier 0 based on one card's performance, I mean, it doesn't even sound real when I say it right now because it just doesn't happen in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! You know, Glads went on with, I still think, is the most impressive run for a deck ever in this game. You know, Gladiator Beast won 6 straight Shonen Jumps, US, Canadian, Japanese, and European Nationals, not to mention Worlds 2008 in a row, people. I mean, that's unheard of for a deck to do it, especially a theme deck. Ask anybody who played back then how powerful the deck was, and Grazaris' explosive destruction power was just too damn strong. You know, especially when you were blanketed by the incredibly devious Cold Wave. The card was powerful, it was incredibly easy to summon, and it made an undeniable impact on the meta. That's why it has to make the top of this list. So, thank you guys for watching as always. Hopefully I'll get some ideas as to what the next top 10 list can be, and yeah, I'm out. Subscribing makes life happy. Honorable mentions go to Metroid Fusion and V8 Fusion. One is a killer app, and the other is a cool, refreshing drink with real fruit taste and a whole serving of vegetables.